Can we use the Bible as a basis for morality? An Australian told me about the surprise his friend had when he first preached in rural churches of Papua New Guinea, where they cope with the heat by wearing very minimal clothing. Some churches had a row of Western women's hats just inside the door, so he got used to seeing topless women wearing incongruously ornate hats during the service. Other churches didn't have those hats, so the women, similarly topless, took off their skirts and put those over their heads when entering the church. They knew that Paul commanded women to cover their heads in worship, but didn't find any specific command in the Bible about covering anything except the head. We clearly need some way to identify which commands in the Bible should be obeyed at all times and which ones need to be adapted in different cultures. Some people think that we can throw away all the commands in the Bible except one: love. Of course, Jesus, Paul, and Augustine all said that love was a good summary of the commandments, but this didn't stop Jesus from listing the 10 Commandments, or stop Paul from giving his congregation lots of specific teaching. We can look for timeless biblical teaching by examining their effect in the culture of the time in which they were given. Having done that, it should be possible to work out how to achieve those same purposes today. Discovering the purpose behind a command is really important, because we can assume that God's purposes are eternal, though the means by which to carry out a given purpose in different societies may vary. It's clearly a good idea to follow the dress codes of the culture you live in. Western women who visit traditional Arab countries are expected to cover up, though not necessarily to the same extent as locals. If you're hoping to evangelize in those countries, you'll certainly want to fit in with the culture as much as possible, so that your message isn't rejected out of hand as a foreign religion. Sometimes God appears to change his mind. In the Old Testament, believers could marry more than one wife, but in the New Testament, Jesus argues against polygamy. The biggest group of changeable commands are those concerning how to worship God and how to live in holiness. In the Old Testament, there are commands about sacrifices and purification rites, such as immersion and sprinkling with blood, which are clearly not commanded in the New Testament. The worship of God changed from outward rites to inner spirituality. The reason was the Holy Spirit. As a result of Jesus' death, believers could be clean enough to have the Holy Spirit within them. So the emphasis shifted from outward purity to inner purity. However, these different sets of commands in the Old and New Testaments achieved the same purpose. Believers could worship God in the closest and most personal way possible at the time. Similarly, the changing laws of polygamy achieved a consistent purpose. They enabled the maximum number of people to find comfort and security in marriage. In the Old Testament, there were too few men, especially during times of war. So without polygamy, many women would have been left unsupported. By New Testament times, the number of men and women were roughly equal. This meant that rich men could have more than one wife, and many poor men were left on their own. Forbidding polygamy put that right. So the command had to change when circumstances changed. Otherwise, it wouldn't achieve God's changeless purpose. All believers want to achieve the purposes of God, but this can't be done by blindly following whatever was commanded in the past in different circumstances and cultures. We have to identify the purpose that those commands were achieving in their original context and discover which command will achieve that same purpose within the context of our culture. And then we have to follow it in order to carry out God's purpose in our society. God bless.